If you're taking the ASVAB Arithmetic Reasoning or AR section, know that I made this video to try to help you out. Now, I've made GED videos here on YouTube for several years now, and I've noticed that more and more of my GED viewers are also taking the ASVAB, so I wanted to make this video to try to help them out, but also to try to help everyone who's joining the military as best I can. And before I get into the video, I just want to take a second to thank you wholeheartedly for your service and wish you the best of luck with everything. Now let's get started. If the absolute value of x minus 4 plus 5 equals 21, then which of the following answer choices is a possible value of x? So now's your chance, if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and if you get stuck, don't worry about it because we're just going to go over the answer. Okay, so the first step here for this question is to subtract 5 from both sides of the equation. So I'm going to do minus 5 on the left-hand side of the equation, and I'm going to do minus 5 on the right-hand side. And let me rewrite this and show you what it'll look like. So this is what we'll have, because 21 minus 5 is 16. Now the key to remember for absolute value questions like this is that you have to solve for both the positive and negative values of what's between these two vertical lines right here. And if you're not sure what I mean by that, let me show you. So we're going to have to do x minus 4 equals 16 and solve this for x. Then we're also going to have to do x minus 4 equals negative 16. So this is what I mean. So let me start with the first case here. So x minus 4 equals 16. How would we solve this for x? In other words, how would we get x by itself on one side of our equation? Well, we want to add 4 to both sides here, right? So if I do that, here's what we'll see. We'll see that if x minus 4 equals positive 16, x equals 20. Now let's come down to the second case down here. So if x minus 4 equals negative 16, what we're going to do to get the x by itself is we're going to add 4 to both sides. So we're going to add 4 to both sides, and here's what we'll get. We'll get x equals negative 12. So there's two possible solutions here, right? So x equals 20 or x equals negative 12. Now, we don't see 20 here as one of the answer choices, but we do see negative 12. So we know that C, negative 12, is the correct answer. So your next question is on screen here. If you'd like to, you could pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the first thing that I want to draw your attention to here is that we see an exclamation point. And whenever we see an exclamation point, we know that we have a factorial. So this is an example of a factorial question. Now, a factorial is the product of the number before the factorial sign and all of the positive whole numbers below it. And if you're not sure what I mean by that, let me show you. So all we're going to do here is we're going to do 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So 5 times 4 is 20, times 3 is 60, times 2 is 120, times 1 is still 120, so the correct answer here is B. So the main takeaway I want you to get from this question is that whenever you see an exclamation point, we know that we have a factorial, and all you have to do for a factorial question is just remember that a factorial is the product of the number before the factorial sign, which in this case was 5, and all of the positive whole numbers below it. So 5 factorial, to solve this, we did 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So your next question is shown on screen here. So let me give you a chance, as always, to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, just unpause the video and we'll talk about it. In order to get questions right, like the one that we're about to go over, we have to do things in the proper order. And you can remember this order by remembering PEMDAS. PEMDAS. Some people remember this as please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Now, the P in PEMDAS stands for parentheses or other grouping symbols that enclose operations. The E stands for exponents and square roots. The M for multiplication, the D for division, the A for addition, and the S for subtraction. So let's look at that example. So when I see this example here, I know that I want to start with what's inside the parentheses here. So I want to start by doing this 2 plus 6. Now, for instructional purposes, I'm going to write out every step here as we go along. But when you're doing your work on your own, it's obviously up to you to decide if you want to write out each step like this or not. So we now have 2 minus 4 times 8 raised to the power of 3. So now we want to deal with our exponent here. So we've got 8 raised to the power of 3 And 8 raised to the power of 3 is the same as 8 times 8 times 8. So 8 times 8 is 64. And then we have to do 64 times 8. So let me write it out like this. 64 times 8. So what is 8 times 4? 8 times 4 is 32. So I'm going to put the 2 down here, and I'm going to put the 3 up here. And I'm going to put this 3 up here to remind me to add 3 once I do 8 times 6. So let's do that. 8 times 6 is 48, plus 3 gives us 51. So the answer here to 8 times 64 is 512. So now I'm going to come back, and this 8 cubed, I'm going to replace it with 512. So we have 2 minus 4 times 512. So now let's do our multiplication next. So we have 4 times 512. So let me write out my 512, put my 4 down here. And what is 4 times 2? 4 times 2 is 8, so I put the 8 here. 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 times 5 is 20. So I just write the 20 here. So I have 2048, and I have to now come back up here and do 2 minus 2048 to get my final answer. And 2 minus 2048 is negative 2046. So when all is said and done, C is the correct answer here. Luke has exactly 10 red marbles, 8 blue marbles, 3 yellow marbles, and 1 green marble in a jar. If he selects a marble from the jar at random, what is the probability that the marble is either yellow or green? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So now is your chance, if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so to get the right answer here, we're going to use the probability formula. And the formula is probability equals the number of desired outcomes divided by the number of possible outcomes. So let me just write a P for probability. And let's first figure out what is the number of desired outcomes. Well, we're asked what is the probability that the marble is either yellow or green. So we know that there are 3 yellow marbles in the jar and there's 1 green marble. So to get the number of desired outcomes, I would do 3 plus 1. Now what about the number of possible outcomes? Well, to get the number of possible outcomes, all I'm going to do is just add up all of the marbles in the jar. So in other words, I'm going to do 10 plus 8 plus 3 plus 1. So let me do the math here. So 3 plus 1 is 4. 10 plus 8 plus 3 plus 1 is 22. So on the test, if you ever get a fraction and you look over at the answer choices and you don't see it, don't panic because you might have to reduce that fraction. And in this case, if we reduce this fraction, we've got 4 over 22, we'll get A as the answer because 4 over 22 reduces to 2 over 11. Right? Because if we divide 4 by 2, we get 2. If we divide 22 by 2, we get 11. So 4 over 22 reduces to 2 over 11. A is the correct answer here. 10 minus negative 2 equals which of the following? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So now is your chance, if you'd like to pause the video, take all the time you need with this, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so the key here with this question is to remember that when you subtract a negative, it's the same as adding. So when I see 10 minus negative 2, I would have to remember that that's really the same as adding 2, right? So 10 minus negative 2 is the same as doing 10 plus 2, which is 12. So the correct answer here is B. A carpenter charges $10 an hour while his cousin charges $15 an hour. If both carpenters work the same number of hours together on a job, how many hours did each of them work if their total charge for the job was $200? Now is your chance, if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the first thing that I want you to see here is that the carpenters are charging the sum of the hourly rates. So we would do 10 plus 15, which equals 25, and we know that they're going to be charging 25 an hour. And we know that the total charge for the job was 200. So the way to get the right answer here is to do 200 divided by 25. Now, when it comes to doing math without a calculator, there's often going to be multiple ways to look at it. But in this case here, you might not know what 200 divided by 25 equals off the top of your head. But you might know that 100 divided by 25 equals 4. So if 100 divided by 25, if we know that that equals 4, and then we take the 100 and we double it, the 4 is also going to double. So again, if 100 divided by 25 equals 4, 200 divided by 25 equals 8. So that's just one way to look at this when it comes to doing 200 divided by 25 without a calculator. If you got C, then you got the correct answer here. So on the screen now is your next question. If you'd like to, you can pause the video, take all the time you need to try this question out, and whenever you're ready, just unpause the video and we'll talk about the answer. Okay, so the first thing that we note here is that we have exclamation points, and that tells us that we have a factorial example. Now, a factorial is the product of the number before the factorial sign in all of the positive whole numbers below it. And I know that can sound a little bit confusing, so let me show you what I mean. So let's start with the top number in our fraction here. So let's start with this 4 factorial. So what is 4 factorial? Well, remember, a factorial is the product of the number before the factorial sign, which in this case is 4, and then all of the positive whole numbers below it. So in other words, we're going to do 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. So now let's deal with the bottom part of our fraction, which is 3 factorial. So 3 factorial, what 3 factorial means is that we're going to do 3 times 2 times 1. So I see in the top part of my fraction here, I've got 3 times 2 times 1, and I also see 3 times 2 times 1 in the bottom of my fraction, so I can actually cancel this out, and the answer is just going to be 4. So there are 2 key takeaways here that I want you to get from this example. So the first is that whenever you see exclamation points, you're dealing with a factorial question. So just remember that a factorial is the product of the number before that factorial sign and all of the positive whole numbers below it. So that's the first takeaway, is how to deal with factorials. Then the second takeaway here is that whenever you see a problem with factorials in a fraction, I recommend simplifying it first like we did here before you solve it. And when all is said and done, 4 is the correct answer here. So on the screen is your next example, and as I edit this video, I just want to make a note here to clarify something. This x right here is not a variable, this is showing multiplication. So this is a to the 4 times a to the 5, and I just wanted to clarify that. Let me give you a chance now, if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so to get this question right, you have to understand some basic exponent rules and be able to apply them to the case we see on the screen here. So in order to walk us through this question here, I'm going to give you a little mini lesson here on the exponent rules that I think you need to know. And I realized that if I were to just tell you how to get the answer to this question as fast as possible, it would save you time in the short run, but I feel like I'd be shortchanging you if I didn't really explain all the exponent rules you have to know to get this right. So again, just bear with me here as I give kind of a mini lesson on the exponent rules that I think you should know as we walk through this question. You know, a big part of my philosophy when it comes to making videos here on YouTube and making educational videos is that I would rather cover all of our bases and give you more information than you might need than not enough. So that's why I'm doing this here. So just bear with me here, as I know that this might be a little tedious, but it is important. So the first exponent rule that I want you to know is that anytime you have a base raised to a negative exponent, we can rewrite that as 1 over the same base raised to the same exponent, but the exponent will be positive. So let me give an example here. So let's just say, pick something random, like let's say 5 raised to the negative 3. So if I have 5 raised to the negative 3, I can rewrite that as 1 over 5 raised to the positive 3. So that's one exponent rule that you should know. So the second exponent rule that you should know is that whenever you have a base raised to a positive power, we can rewrite it as 1 over the same base raised to the same power, but the power is negative. So let me pick another example here. So let's just say, I don't know, 7 raised to the positive 4. So 7 raised to the positive 4, I can rewrite that as 1 over 7 raised to the negative 4. So 7 raised to the positive 4 and 1 over 7 raised to the negative 4, they're both the same thing. They're 2 ways of writing the same thing. They just look different. So here's the third exponent rule that I think you should know. When we have 2 bases and the bases are the same and we're doing a multiplication problem, we can add the exponents and keep the base the same. So let me show you what I mean by that. So if we have a raised to the b times a raised to the c, we see that the two bases are the same. So what we can do is we can rewrite this as a raised to the b plus c. So for example, maybe I have a raised to the 2 times a raised to the 7. This is really the same as a raised to the 2 plus 7. And since 2 plus 7 is 9, we would say that this is the same as a raised to the power of 9. So the next rule that's important to know is that when we have two bases that are the same and we're dividing, we can subtract the exponent. So let's say I have a raised to the power of b divided by a raised to the power of c. Well, since I have the same base and we're dividing, this is the same as a raised to the b minus c. So let me just make up an example here to illustrate this. So let's say I have a raised to the 4, and I'm dividing by a raised to the 2. This is really the same as a raised to the 4 minus 2. And since 4 minus 2 is just 2, this is the same as a raised to the power of 2. So lastly, we have the case where we're raising a number with an exponent to another exponent. So let's say we've got a raised to the 3rd raised to the 5th. So what we do here is we're going to multiply the exponents. So in this case, this is the same as a raised to the power of 15. So let me give you another quick example here, and I'm just picking something random. Let's say that we have a raised to the 7th raised to the 2nd. Okay, this is the same as a raised to the 7 times 2, which is equal to a to the 14th. Okay, so again, when we have the case where we're raising a number with an exponent to another exponent, all we're going to do is multiply the exponent. So I know I just threw a lot at you really fast here, and now we're going to walk through how to solve this actual question, but just keep in mind that in order to get this question right, you're going to want to know those basic exponent rules that I just covered here, and we're going to see how they apply to this question here. I'm going to do a super fast explanation first just to kind of show you the big picture here, then I'll break everything down in much more detail. So what I see here is that I've got a to the 4 times a to the 5. Since they both have the same base, I can just add the exponents. So this a to the 4 times a to the 5, I can rewrite this as a to the 9 because 4 plus 5 is 9. So when I do that, I'll have a to the 9 divided by a to the 3. And I can do 9 minus 3, which is 6. And then I would rewrite this as a to the 6 raised to the 4. And then I still have that plus 4 divided by a to the negative 24. So I'll rewrite that out as well. So the way I handle this now is I'm going to do 6 times 4, which is 24. So I do that, and I can rewrite this then as a to the 24 plus 4 divided by a to the negative 24. Now, the way that I want to handle this is I take this a to the negative 24, and I'm going to bring it upstairs in my fraction. And when I do that, the negative 24 is going to become positive 24. So I would then have a to the 24 plus 4 times a to the positive 24. So the way I finish this out is I just add a to the 24 and 4 times a to the 24, which is going to be 5, a to the 24. So we can see that the correct answer is A. So that's a super fast explanation. I just did that just to kind of show you the big picture. Now let me break this down much more slowly and I'll explain every step in more detail. So since the terms a raised to the power of 4 and a raised to the power of 5 have the same bases and we're multiplying them together, we can keep the same base and add the exponents. So let me do that and let me rewrite here. So again, we know that a to the power of 4 times a to the power of 5 is the same as a raised to the 4 plus 5. So 4 plus 5 is 9, so I can take this a raised to the 4 plus 5 and just simply rewrite it as a raised to the power of 9. So the next thing I see here is that we have a raised to the power of 9 divided by a raised to the power of 3. So since we have two bases that are the same and we're dividing, we can rewrite this as a raised to the 9 minus 3. So we would have a raised to the 9 minus 3 here. And what is 9 minus 3? 9 minus 3 is 6. So we can rewrite this as a raised to the 6 raised to the 4 plus 4 divided by a minus negative, or not minus, a raised to the minus 24. Now, when you're doing your work, you don't have to write out every single step like this. I'm just doing this because I want to show all the steps for teaching purposes. But anyway, we've got this scenario now, and what we want to do is multiply 6 and 4. And then we're going to rewrite again. So 6 times 4 is 24, so we would have a raised to the 24 plus 4 over a raised to the negative 24. So now, whenever we have a base raised to a negative number in the denominator, remember the denominator is just the bottom of the fraction, we can bring it up to the numerator and write that exponent as positive. So I'm going to run out of room here, but we would have, if I rewrote this, a to the 24 plus 4 times a raised to the 24. So to finish out here, we see now that we have the same base and the same exponent. So we just add them together and we're going to get 5a to the 24. So this is a lot of work here, but when all is said and done, the correct answer is A, 5a raised to the power of 24. So if you're confused at how a raised to the 24 plus 4a to the 24 equals 5a to the 24, let me just give you another way to think of it. So you can think of it like this. You can think of it like 1a to the 24 plus 4a to the 24. We're going to take this 1 and take this 4 and we're going to add them. And you can think of it as just bringing the a to the 24 along for the ride. So 1 plus 4 equals 5, and just think of it like we're bringing that a to the 24 along for the ride, and that's how we get 5a to the 24. And I know I just covered a lot here, and I covered it kind of fast, so if you have any questions on this, as with any question in this video, feel free to let me know down below in the comments. The ratio of 2.5 to 5.5 is equal to the ratio of which of the following? Is it A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So one thing that you should know about ratios is that there are 3 different ways to write them. So the first way is using words, like we see here, 2.5 to 5.5. Another way to write them would be using a colon, just like we see here. And the third way to write them would be a fraction. So if I wrote this ratio as a fraction, it would be 2.5 over 5.5. So with that being said, how do we proceed here? Well, the way I'm going to move forward here is by taking both of these mixed numbers and converting them to improper fractions. So I want to take 2.5 and I want to convert that into an improper fraction. So how am I going to do that? Well, one thing to know is that whenever we've got a mixed number, the denominator in the mixed number is going to be the same as the denominator in the improper fraction. So 2.5, the denominator in the fraction is 2, so I keep that the same in my improper fraction. Now, how do I get the top number in my improper fraction? Well, the way that I do that is I take 2 and multiply it by 2, and then I add 1. So the top number is going to be 5. Now I can do a similar process here with this 5.5. So I convert this 5.5 to an improper fraction by keeping the denominator the same, right? So we see that the denominator is 2 here. So in my improper fraction, I put a 2 down here in my denominator. Now the top number of the improper fraction, the way that I get that is by doing 2 times 5 plus 1. So 2 times 5 is 10 plus 1 is 11. So I have 5 over 2 to 11 over 2. So if I multiply both sides of the ratio by 2, I will end up with 5 to 11. So if you're not 100% sure if this makes sense to you or not, let me try explaining it in a slightly different way. We can take this same ratio here and we can write it as a fraction. So instead of writing it with a colon, we could do 5 over 2 divided by 11 over 2. Now there's a rule in math whenever we divide fractions that we can take the second fraction and we can flip it upside down and multiply it by the first. And if you're not sure what I mean by that, let me show you here. So we're going to leave the first fraction, the 5 over 2, exactly as it is. And I'm now going to multiply by 2 over 11. And the 2's will cancel out here. and we'll see that the answer is 5/11. A bus passes 4 stops every 12 minutes. At this rate, what is the number of stops the bus will pass in 1 hour? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So before I do any calculations, there's one quick change I want to make. So see how up here this says 12 minutes and down here this says 1 hour? So I'm actually going to change this 1 hour into 60 minutes just so that we have the same units of time here. And 60 minutes is equal to 1 hour. So again, I'm just taking this 1 hour and changing it to 60 minutes. So now, how do we do the calculation here? Well, let me set the problem up like this. So we know that there are 4 stops every 12 minutes that the bus passes. So I can write 4 stops over 12 minutes. And now what I can do is write a proportion. So when I write my proportion, I'm going to put 60 minutes down here. And then up top, I'm just going to write an X. And the reason I'm writing this X is because we don't know the number of stops. So now I have the question set up. And the next thing I want to do is multiply by 60 on both sides. So if I multiply by 60 on the right-hand side, the 60s will cancel out. And I also have to multiply by 60 over here. Now, there are a couple ways to look at this. So when I multiply by 60 over here, I could do 60 times 4 and then divide by 12. But I could also first do 60 divided by 12 and then multiply by 4. So that's what I'm actually going to do here. So 60 divided by 12 is 5. So I now have 5 times 4, and 5 times 4 equals 20. So the correct answer here, when all is said and done, is 20. Kate's weekly salary is $90 less than Jake's. Jake's weekly salary is $40 less than Tyler's. If Tyler makes $250 per week, how much does Kate make each week? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so a fairly straightforward way to approach this is to just look at the information that we're given here and use it to write out a couple equations. So the first thing that I see here is we're told Kate's weekly salary is $90 less than Jake's. So from this, I can say K equals J minus 90. Now from the next sentence, we know that Jake's weekly salary is $40 less than Tyler's. So I can write out the equation J equals T minus 40. So lastly here, we're told that Tyler makes $250 a week. So we know that T equals 250. So from this, since we know that T equals 250, I'm going to come up here to my second equation, J equals T minus 40, and I'm going to plug 250 in here for T. So if I do that, 250 minus 40, that's going to give me 210. So I can say that J equals 210. So again, since I know that J equals T minus 40 and I know that T equals 250, I can find J by doing 250 minus 40, which is 210. So now what I can do is come back up here to the first equation, K equals J minus 90. And since I know that J equals 210, I can plug 210 in here for J. And when I'm done doing 210 minus 90, I'll see that the answer is 120. So the correct answer here is B, 120. And if you have another way to do this question that you think is simpler or more straightforward, please let me know down below in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. If 10 square root 5x equals 50, what is the value of 6x? So if you'd like to, now's your chance to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so the way to approach this question is to start by figuring out what the value of x is, and then once we know the value of x, we can find the value of 6x. So the thing that I'm going to do first here is divide by 10 on both sides. Now if I divide by 10 on the left-hand side, the 10s will cancel out, and I'll be left with square root of 5x on the left-hand side of the equation. And if I divide by 10 on the right-hand side, I'm going to get 5. So let me rewrite this now. So we'll have square root of 5x equals 5. So what do I want to do next? Well, the next step here is to square both sides. So if I square the square root of 5x, I'm going to get 5x. And if I square 5, I get 25. So I have 5x equals 25. So to get x, what I'm going to do is divide by 5 on both sides of the equation. So on the left-hand side, the 5s will cancel out. On the right-hand side, 25 divided by 5 gives me 5. So I'll figure out that x equals 5. So if you got to this step right here and you thought that A was the correct answer, know that you did a really good job by getting to this step. But remember, we're not just asked to find x here. What we really need to do here is find 6x. So again, if you got this far and thought A was the correct answer, you did a really good job by getting to that step. But what we need to do is take it one step further here, and we need to do 6 times 5, because we don't just want to know x, we want to know the value of 6x. So 6 times 5 gives us 30. So the correct answer here is not A. The correct answer here is C, 30. The total ticket cost for 2 adults and 2 children to see a movie is $30. If each child's ticket costs 1/2 of each adult's ticket, how much does one adult ticket cost? Is the answer here A, B, C, or D? So let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so the way that I want to start this question is by writing out an equation. So we can say that 2A plus 2C equals 30, where A stands for adult and C stands for children. So what I can now do, because I know that each child's ticket costs 1/2 of each adult's ticket, is I can write another equation, or I should say I can take the first equation that I wrote here and modify it so that I have 2A plus 2. And so for C here, I can write half A, because we know that each child's ticket equals half of an adult's ticket. And this is still equal to 30. So what I see now is that the 2's are going to cancel out here because I'd have 2 divided by 2. So I would then have 2A plus A equals 30. Now 2A plus A is 3A. So I would have 3A equals 30. So how do I get A now? Well, what I want to do is divide by 3 on both sides. So if I do that, I'm going to see that A equals 10. So the correct answer here is B, $10. Compare 1/6, 3/5, 4/7, and 1/10 and determine which fraction has the greatest value. Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So let me give you a chance now if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the first thing that I see here is that 2 of these fractions are equal to values that are less than half. And if you're not sure what I mean by that and why that's important, let me break it down here. So when I look at the fraction 1/6, without a calculator, I have no idea what the value of 1/6 is, but I can tell that it's something less than half. How can I tell that? Well, what is half of 6? Half of 6 is 3. So I know that 3/6 is equal to half. Now, when I come back and look at 1/6, since 1 is a smaller number than 3, I know that 1/6 must be equal to something that's less than half. And I can say something similar about 1/10, right? So what is half of 10? Half of 10 is 5. So I can say that 5/10 equals half. Now, since 1 is a smaller number than 5, I know that the value of 1/10 must be something less than half. But I can't say the same thing about 3/5 or 4/7. So if I look at 3/5, what is half of 5? Well, half of 5 is 2.5. So I can say that 2.5/5 equals half. Now, since 3 is a bigger number than 2.5, I know that 3/5 is going to be equal to something that's greater than half. Same with 4/7. So half of 7 is 3.5. So I can say that 3.5/7 is equal to half. And while I don't know the exact value of 4/7 without using a calculator, I can tell that 4/7 is equal to something that's greater than half because 4 is a bigger number than 3.5. So the point here that I want to make is that we can eliminate 1 over 6 and we can eliminate 1 over 10 because we know that these two fractions are equal to something less than half, and we know that 3 over 5 and 4 over 7 are equal to something greater than half, so one of these two is going to be the correct answer. So if you had to guess on this, you'd want to guess either B or C. So that being said, though, we don't want to guess, we want to know how to get the right answers, so let's go over how to do this. So the way to do this is we want to get a common denominator. And the denominator is just a big word for the bottom number in a fraction. And we call the number in the top of a fraction the numerator. So how do we get a common denominator here? Well, what I can do is I can look at my first fraction, which is 3 over 5, and I can look at the denominator of the second fraction, which is 7. So I can multiply both the top and bottom numbers in my first fraction by 7. Now I can come over to my second fraction, which is 4 over 7, and I can look back at the original denominator of the first fraction, which was 5. And I can multiply both the top and the bottom number of the second fraction by 5. So why am I doing this? Well, I'm doing this because this is going to give me a common denominator. So what is 7 times 3? 7 times 3 is 21. What's 7 times 5? 7 times 5 is 35. Now, what is 4 times 5? 4 times 5 is 20. And what is 7 times 5? Well, we know that 7 times 5 is 35. So now that these fractions have the same number in the denominator, all we have to do is look at the number in the top of each fraction and see which one's bigger. So we've got 21, and here we've got 20. Well, 21 is a bigger number than 20. So that tells me that 3 over 5 is bigger than 4 over 7. So when all is said and done here, we see that 3 over 5 emerged as the greatest value. So B is the correct answer here. A box has soccer balls and baseballs. If the ratio of soccer balls to baseballs is 4 to 5 and there are 30 baseballs, how many soccer balls are in the box? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So now's your chance if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, take all the time you need, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take this 4 to 5, and I'm going to take this ratio and write it as a fraction. Now I'm just going to make a little note here. I'm just going to put S over B, and I'm just writing this here just to remind me that when I write my ratio as a fraction, I want to put soccer balls over baseballs. So in other words, I want to take this 4 to 5, and I want to write 4 over 5. Now, if we were to get this reversed, if we put the 5 up here and the 4 down here, we'd get the wrong answer. So just keep in mind that whatever number they give you first in the ratio, that goes on top of the fraction. So now, since we know the number of baseballs, we can write a proportion. So we know that there are 30 baseballs. So do I want to put the 30 up here, or do I want to put the 30 down here? Well, remember, the ratio, it's soccer balls to baseballs. So baseballs is going to go down here in the bottom of the fraction. So I'm just going to write a 30 here. And I'm going to put X right here because we don't know what the number of soccer balls is. That's what we want to find. So I've got 4 over 5 equals X over 30. And now what I want to do is multiply by 30 on both sides of the equation. So if I multiply by 30 over here, the 30s cancel out. And so when I multiply by 30 over here, there's two options. I could do 30 times 4 and then divide by 5, or I could start by doing 30 divided by 5 and then multiply by 4. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to do 30 divided by 5 first. Now what is 30 divided by 5? 30 divided by 5 is 6. So now I have 6 times 4 equals X. So what is 6 times 4? Well, 6 times 4 is 24. So we see that 24 equals X. So in other words, there are 24 soccer balls in the box. So A is the correct answer here. A video game that originally cost $50 is on sale for $40. The sale price was what percent less than the original price? Is the answer A, B, C, or D? So now is your chance if you'd like to pause the video, try to figure this out, and whenever you're ready, we'll go over the answer. Okay, so to approach this question, we're going to use the percent change formula. So I'm going to set it up like this. I'm going to do 100% times the final value, which was 40, minus the initial value, which was 50. And we're going to divide by the initial value, which was 50. So before I worry about multiplying by 100%, let me just simplify the 40 minus 50 divided by 50. So 40 minus 50 is negative 10. So when I rewrite this, I'll have 100% times negative 10 over 50. Now, I can actually cancel a 0 out from the 10 and the 50, so that would give me 100% times negative 1 over 5. And this comes out to negative 20%. So the correct answer here is D, negative 20%. Now, in my practice test style videos, I often pick out what in my opinion is the hardest question in the video. Now for this video here, there were a couple questions that I could have gone with, but this was the one I ultimately picked. So after you watch this, if you'd like to, let me know down below in the comments if you thought there was a harder question. Sam knows that his average for 5 tests was 93. He remembers that he scored 89, 92, 94, and 97 on his first 4 tests. However, he cannot remember his score on his 5th test. What was Sam's score on his 5th test? So if you'd like to, you can pause the video now, you can give this a shot, and if you get stuck, don't worry about it because we're just going to go over how to do it. Okay, so one way to understand this question is to start by thinking about how we would calculate the average in a general case. So in a general case, the way that we get the average is we take all of the numbers in the data set and we add them up, and then we divide by the total number of numbers in the data set. So here, if we wanted to calculate the average for 5 tests, the way that we would do it is we would add up 89, 92, 94, 97, the 5th test score, and then we would divide by 5 because there were 5 tests here. But in this case, this is different from a general case of finding the average because there's a twist here. And the twist is that we already know that the average on all 5 tests was 93. But we don't know what the 5th test score was. So the name of the game here is to solve this equation for x. In other words, we want to get x by itself on one side of our equation, and that's going to give us the answer. The move that I want to make here, now that we have the problem set up, is to add 89, 92, 94, and 97. So if I do the math here and I work out that calculation, I'll get 372. So when I rewrite, I'll have 372 plus x divided by 5 equals 93. So again, the name of the game here is to get this x by itself on one side of our equation. So what I'm going to do now is multiply by 5 on both sides of the equation. So if I multiply by 5 on both sides of the equation, I will have to do 93 times 5. So let me work that out here by hand. So 93 times 5, how do I do this? Well, let me start by doing 5 times 3. 5 times 3 is 15, so I'll put the 5 down here, put the 1 up here. 5 times 9 is 45, plus 1 is 46. So when I rewrite all of this, I'll have 372 plus x equals 465. So the next thing I want to do is subtract 372 from both sides. So if I subtract 372 from the left side, 372's cancel out on the left side. And when I subtract 372 from the right side, here's what I get. So what is 5 minus 2? 5 minus 2 is 3. Now to do this, what I have to do is borrow. So I come over to the 4, I'm going to cross it out, turn it into a 3. Then I'm going to stick a 1 here in front of this 6 and make it a 16. So 16 minus 7 is 9. And 3 minus 3 is just 0. So the answer here is x equals 93.